Yeji Yeon. She's a multi-disciplinary artist trained primarily in classical singing, ballet, contemporary dance, and theater. Much of her inspiration comes from nature and traveling. She was born in South Korea, moved to England at a young age. She is currently based in Seoul, Korea. She was trained at Italia Conti Academy in Performing Arts and at Korea National University of Arts in Theater Acting. Welcome to our living room. How are you?
Thank you. I'm great, thank you.
How are things in South Korea?
The social distancing has been less rigid recently, so it's been more, I suppose, connective, but the cases are on the rise again, so it's quite alarming again. But overall, I think it's more hopeful, much more hopeful than it used to be. Yeah.
We've had conversations before, and I think the topic of isolation, it's important in the work that you'll be doing. How has isolation affected you directly?
Well, as I base in theater, I do a lot of work on offline in theater and in community arts. So 2 of my projects have been cancelled. One was typical sort of theater work, and the other was a community arts program, which was visiting the elderly homes and providing them with sort of artistic activities, and that's obviously been cancelled. And even when the COVID situation calms down, I suppose that since it's the elderly home, it's not going to be easy for them to open up anytime soon. So work-wise, it's been quite tough. And just personally, I think it's for everybody, it's been difficult and trying.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of anxiety and even depression and other manifestations of emotions that come with all of these. Can you take me back to that moment when you're a little girl growing up in South Korea and then you moved to England? How was that? Was there a cultural shock?
I was too young to perceive it as a shock, but it's definitely been an instant, a point of change, because I also moved there without my parents. I stayed in a boarding school the whole time. So not only being in a foreign country, but being in a situation where I was in a family of just children around me, I suppose, not many adults around. Obviously, there is the headmistress and teachers, but not somebody who you're with all the time to look to, I suppose, as a parental figure. I think I've had quite an interesting childhood in that respect. The person that I'd look up to as a role of the parent would be always changing, and there'd be a many of them. It's been an experience, yeah.
What about now that you came back to South Korea? Did you experience what we call a reverse cultural shock, adjusting to your hometown?
Yeah, definitely. This one I can remember, and I really feel strongly about, because all of Korea, which I'd remembered as a child, and everything that I was now seeing as an adult, there was so much gap in between. Yeah. And it was really shocking for me. And I think I'm still adjusting, to be honest. And in fact, it's only recently that I had realized how to navigate around the Korean society. And I think that came from like extensive traveling around the world for about 2 years. I was always on the road for about 2 years, and after that, especially after visiting like near Eastern countries, and especially after visiting India, I realized what Korea was in perspective. And beforehand, it was quite difficult for me to accept some things the like the gender issues or the conflicts just that I was like on a daily basis witnessing. I didn't understand where they were coming from. But having the perspective of a traveler, and with that perspective, looking at Korea, like I began to understand more. Yeah.
And I want to move on and talk a little bit about one particular piece of your work that really called my attention, and that's 448. It's your take on 448 Psychosis, which is a play by the British playwright Sarah Kane,
Right.
who suffered clinical depression. She wrote the play in 1999, and she died by suicide short after she wrote the play. And your work was beautiful. Your take on that, your interpretation of her work was beautiful, and I wanted to talk to you about it. So the play is called 448 because Miss Kane used to wake up at 4:48 in the morning, and she says that's when depression used to visit her, right? Why did you choose this work? Because I find it interesting because it's also very introspective from a Western playwright. How did you come to this play? Why did you decide to work with it?
The point of meeting with the play for 48 Psychosis, it was very intuitive. Um, to be honest, in words, I couldn't explain why I'd chosen the piece, other than that I was strongly inclined to it. But in hindsight, looking back, I think at the time I had related with the internal journey of that piece and Sarah Kane.
The work is beautiful. I think if anybody has the chance to look at the video, it's uploaded on YouTube. I think it's 12 minutes long or so. We'll share the link with everybody to see it. And I think anybody who has gone through depression understands that feeling of waking up and looking at yourself in the mirror, and it's almost like you're not there, right? But I was fascinated by it, and I always found interesting. I mean, the name of the play, 448 Psychosis, and she's saying this is when I would wake up. It makes me think of Rumi's poem that says, "The breezes at dawn have secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask what you really want. Don't go back to sleep." People are going back and forth across the door sill where the two worlds touch. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep. And I think many people have that experience of waking up in the middle of the night. And usually, if you pay attention, it's at a similar time. So I always connect that idea to meditation, like don't go back to sleep, go and meditate. But also it connects me with the work that you're doing this year, which is called artificial meditation. I haven't been able to see it, but it made me think of that. Like when I thought about 448, I thought about the poem, and then I thought, oh, now she's working on artificial meditation. So what's artificial meditation all about?
It's a story about the dystopian world in the year of 2029.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the point just right before the singularity, and it's where some citizens are against the idea of artificial intelligence and are protesting against any further development, because at this point people are being frightened by the existence of the artificial intelligence, and it's a story about a couple who lives in an old-fashioned way. they're against this new era of technological renaissance, and they live secluded in a pre-gentrified area of Seoul. It takes place in Korea, and they want to leave the city and look for a new place, a new home, and a new experience away from all these machines and embracing more of an ecocentric life. But at the same time, they're afraid, and they're too used to this sense of the city and the sense of learned helplessness. One day they're visited by a female android knocking on the door asking for help, and suddenly they find themselves living together, which is very unexpected for the couple who are against all these robot culture. And the work sprang from all my dreams and fears and insecurities or what ifs and all sorts of things going on in my head with the coming artificial intelligence age. Yeah, it's my second film work, and it's been shot over the course of 1 week, and it's 87 minutes long. And currently I'm just fine tweaking the post-production side of things.
Are you also acting in it like you did with your former film? Like you directed it and also acted in it?
Yes, I did.
Great. And wait to see it. I want to talk about what you mentioned to us when you approached co-residency with your application. You were talking about how you want to keep this creativity flame during these very peculiar times, right? You want to explore the psychological impact that this is having on people. And I want to read this part where you say, you mentioned that you want to do choreography and a film, a little bit of improvisation and working with the film to represent this. And you say the choreography will be site-specific improvisation within a given structure of a narrative. How quarantine, isolation, and social distancing slowly deteriorates the mind until a breakthrough is achieved as one finds an outlet via internet, explores into different online social platforms wherein healthy social connection is possible and feels whole and connected once again. And I think it's really interesting talking about Sarah Kane and talking about the artificial meditation and now talking about this. It's how to find the light by going through these periods of difficulty, right? Like you mentioned, keeping the flame alive, and I think it's a very important topic, right? And I while I was researching your work, I kept thinking of Sarah Kane. Sadly, she was not able to keep that flame alive, right? So can you guide us more towards what approach you would take or elaborate more on what I just read about the work that you're going to be doing with us and how you that important and difficult task to show that connection, feeling connected again with all this distancing.
First of all, the work is going to be in a video format, capturing improvised dance, and these are going to be shot in some formerly the busiest parts of Seoul, the cultural hub, community hub, religious places of worship, temples, churches, and mosques. The city squares and all these places where people used to gather, that's now relatively empty. So I want to explore into the psychosocial impact of the social distancing. as well as the internal and personal and individual aspect of the impact that this time's having on us. And I read a very interesting article about the connection between the collective consciousness and the dreamscape of the people around the world during the times of the pandemic. And strangely, a lot of people have been reporting nightmares and strange dreams and anxiety-inducing themes. I looked through my dream journal and I also found the same effect on my dream world recently. And that's also going to be a source in my work, the journals from my dreams that I've been collecting. As a soundscape, I want to translate that into sound and music, along with some voice I capture from the mainstream media and substream media talking about the COVID-19. And I suppose I know that we are all connected, and I also believe that the primary aim of the arts and of all creation is to do with connection, or the reinterpretation of the connected collective consciousness.
I agree. I totally agree. And how important it is to know that others are going through the same, right? When you read this article and you realize I'm not the only one feeling anxiety. I'm not the only one who's having these dreams. It makes you feel like, because quite often when one is in that state, you sort of close all the walls. You close in, and then you think that nobody can save you or take you out of that room. But when you realize that, you know what, this is normal. There's ways to find help. You can get out of it. It's part of understanding that, you know, we're not in this alone. And I think that's very important, right? Thank you very much for saying that. I'd like to finish this conversation. I saw that you recently posted in social media a poem by Mr. Bernard Gunther, right? It's called Sense and Relaxation Below Your Mind. It was published in 1968. Can you just close this interview reading a little part of that poem?
Sure. It's enough to be alive, to see the sea, the sky, and watch the changes. To eat, talk, joke, and create. Love, feel the air, ground, sun, yourself, and not have to be somebody.
It is enough. We are enough. I am enough. You are enough. Whomever is listening to this, you are enough. Thank you very much, Yeji. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.